Thank you very much. Hafa To my new friend, the governor, ma'am, thank you for the time we got to spend yesterday, and Lieutenant Governor, for the time you and I have spent in the building and the relationship that we're building. I'm looking forward to many, many more conversations in the times we get to work together. So thank you first and foremost for your hospitality and allowing me this opportunity to be here. I'm truly, truly grateful. And to all of you who have already had conversations with, thank you for the time that you've given me to share some of the thoughts that you have. It is truly an honor and a very humbling privilege to be able to share with you just a few thoughts on what is important. I've been in the job now just a little over 100 days, and to my team, thank you. We as a team have been on the road just a little over 3 weeks. We were in a week in Alaska, a week in Hawaii, and now we'll be here for a week. And what I have shared with everyone, the purpose and the reason that I'm here is it's one thing. I've spent a great deal of time in my career studying this region. I have been in the past, a combat planner, war planner, have studied the region, have been to China, Taiwan. And so from that regard, as a member of the military, I bring that experience. But it's a very different thing when I get to see it through the eyes that I have to actually sit down and talk to you, because my goal in being here is to see it through your eyes, to understand it in a way that only comes from the conversations that we get to have, and that I can then take that back to Washington, D.C. and advocate. And so I truly appreciate the opportunity that we have to spend in our time together. Now, we're gathered here today as leaders from across the military, government, industry, because you understand, as has been said so many times by our hosts, that Guam stands at the forefront of the United States Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, what I can tell you from my time here is there is a palpable sense of urgency to quickly and effectively address the challenges that we all face. And as I've said repeatedly, as I shared in my testimony, and as I will tell you here, which is my mantra, the status quo will not get us there. We need a new mindset. We need a collective and integrated approach and a willingness to make a fundamental shift in how we think about installations in general, not only in the Pacific, but throughout the world. As the Assistant Secretary of War for Energy, Installations and Environment, I have the privilege of signing for 27 million acres of DOW property, as well as over 800 different locations around the globe, and I take that responsibility very seriously. And when we talk about installations, we're really talking about them as the strength when we say the words peace through strength. You see, for too long, what has happened is we viewed our installations as support structures, and that perspective must change. Our installations are weapon systems. They are no less vital than our ships, our tanks, our planes. They must be postured to maximize lethality and defend the homeland while remaining secure against a myriad of threats. And without well-maintained, secure, and resilient installations, just as importantly, the communities that surround them, we cannot effectively train our warfighters, deploy our forces, or conduct and sustain operations. Installations are the true bedrock of our entire defense enterprise. They are the home to our people, that's true, but they're also the incubators for innovation. They are critical nodes for our global networks, and they are power projection platforms for our warfighting capabilities. We must ensure that they are optimized to execute the full spectrum of military operations without pause. Now, this is especially critical because our installations and the communities that embrace them face new threats unrealized in past generations. Our adversaries are actively targeting our critical defense, government, and economic infrastructure, both within and beyond our fence lines. Every domain is contested: air, land, sea, space, and cyber, with attacks calibrated to remain below the threshold that would compel an overt American response, but are nonetheless a threat to our national security. Now, for those of us who have served during a certain era, the phrase mission first, people always resonates deeply. We must never forget that the mission hinges on people. People who need a secure and solid base of operations from which they can deter adversaries and, if necessary, defeat them. Now, one way that the new understanding of installations is bearing fruit is the recognition of the need to streamline governance related to installations across multiple areas, whether that be the weapons, the platforms, the logistics, sustainment, operational planning, and infrastructure. Now, my office has established the Guam Synchronization and Oversight Council, called the GSOC, which integrates a set of formally disparate decision-making processes into a single common operating picture. The GSOC is also the final decision authority to deconflict the myriad of Department of War construction activities here in Guam. And I've taken it upon myself where I meet with my service partners each and every week on an alternating basis, and then we gather monthly where we talk about these cross-cutting issues. Similarly, as the governor mentioned earlier, we have the Guam Installation and Community Supporting Working Group, or the GICSWG, which has given us a vital forum to discuss and adjudicate issues of Guam labor support, housing, military construction, roads, medical support, environmental issues, a multitude of topics. Once again, decisions must now be taken with an eye toward how they will have affected and given the possibility of these things under a contested environment. So that brings me to my second point, resilience. You know, it's been widely said our military's ability to succeed depends on having a strong foundation. We understand that our adversaries are targeting infrastructure like electrical grids and water systems, which are the very foundations upon which we all rely. I had the privilege yesterday of sitting down with leadership from Guan Power and Guam Water and having really straightforward conversations about the needs of our community. Notice how I said that. That's our community. That is not the installations. It's a collective approach to what we're trying to get done. So we're collaborating across these defense communities on mutually beneficial initiatives through direct support and planning, while we also are safeguarding military operations and all those things that might pose a risk to national security. One of my favorite words of all times after community is partnership. And partnerships with our defense communities are critical to ensuring that we keep faith not only with our service members and their families, but also within our communities. And that through a variety of quality of life programs, we can actually address the many challenges that we corporately share. And this is particularly vital when it comes to housing. As the department's chief housing officer, I know how critical this is. This is not just a Guam problem. This is one that I talk about each and every day in all of our communities. We know that there's an expanding housing shortfall in Guam, due in part to planned force structure increases, and we are working with the government of Guam to address those. This January, my office issued a Guam densification policy regarding military components to plan, design, and construct family housing units that are both multi-family and multi-story. And I want you to note that for unaccompanied housing buildings, that means that we would require certain heights, certain ways that we want to get after that. And then in July, we put out a request for proposal that is primarily to address family housing. So this is going to target 900 new units by FY28, with the possibility of additional phases to follow on. And I had the opportunity to meet with that team who's working that problem set yesterday. You can expect there's more. We truly understand the needs of what we have talked about, and the governor and I spoke on this yesterday about affordable and attainable housing and the importance of that in this community. We recognize that and we want to address that. Another way we're both demonstrating developing resiliency is our commitment to what we refer to as Black Start electrical exercises. These are ways in which we test our ability to operate with a total grid loss, directly informing energy reliance and investments and funding priorities. We've done over 64 of them so far, and you can expect we'll be doing more. As we push further to the evolving demand of our mission, we have to invest in cutting-edge infrastructure, streamline processes, and leverage technology. Our installations have to be resilient to any threat, be it a cyber attack, extreme weather, or physical assault. This demands robust security measures, advanced cybersecurity protocols, and comprehensive emergency management planning. And we're working with industry and other federal partners to address grid transmission weaknesses and cyber threats. And we do that through integrating modeling and technology solutions to strengthen our mission assurance so the power will always be there when we need it. But to truly foolproof, future-proof our installations and maximize lethality, we have to revolutionize the way we build and modernize. We need to aggressively adopt innovative construction approaches to reduce cost and increase speed. Some of the ways that we want to do that is what we refer to as advanced innovation in design build, or what we call progressive design. This integrated approach fosters collaboration between designers and construction teams from the outset. This allows us to accelerate our project delivery, reduce costs, and drive innovation and design and energy efficiency. Another way is through our alternative delivery methods. We need to leverage methods such as the construction manager at risk and other alternative deliveries. These models help promote transparency in the projects we are doing. They share our risk, and then we work with our contractors to ensure that we are delivering better value to the taxpayer and a more resilient infrastructure for our communities. One other way is through unified facilities criteria. And while the UFCs can provide foundational standards, we have to actively modernize and update them to incorporate the latest advancements in sustainable building practices, resilient design, and energy-efficient technologies. And where the UFCs are not applicable or appropriate, we need to lift that burden from the project. We need to use them as guides, not mandatory restrictions. To my development partners, you have my commitment. We're going to drive that forward, and I anticipate releasing new MILCON standards and new design in the very near future. One aspect of construction specific to Guam is the need, has been mentioned numerous times, and throughout the entire region, for H-2B visas. I appreciated the governor's initiative on this, as well as her ideas on how we can move that forward. We plan to work together to continue to push that, and I'll be taking that message back to Washington with Hill engagements scheduled already for the end of the month. But this is an example of where one size does not fit all. We need to assure strategy that drives policy, not the other way around, and we cannot be beholden to outdated methodologies when the future demands innovation. And nowhere is that innovation more vital than in our energy portfolio. Energy, to me, is mission assurance. And without reliable power, we can't train, sustain, or project the force. Escalating energy demands in military operations, coupled with complex global concerns, create an urgent demand for immediate action. We are increasingly moving towards the strategic deployment of advanced energy technologies, and in partnership with the Department of Energy, the Department of War is accelerating the deployment of advanced nuclear technologies, optimizing for mission impact, scalability, safety, and cost effectiveness. Now understand when I say that I believe that we can move these technologies forward in the right places and at the right times. But I'm also a big believer that local problems require local solutions. So this is not, again, as I said, a one-size-fits-all. In fact, we are relatively technology agnostic, but we are focused on what is the best value for the department on this issue. And depending on the key factors of local terrain, system requirements, we're exploring everything from advanced geothermal to microgrids to other ways to get to energy diversification. And as we refine sophisticated microgrids, we're integrating natural gas and liquid natural gas into the portfolio, a heavy reliance on energy storage, and I've had some great conversations here on energy storage, as well as advanced controls. And so these localized solutions reduce dependence on fragile regional grids, and they increase our operational endurance. It's part of a portfolio of work we're doing to revolutionize and change regulatory pathways, secure critical fuel supplies, and streamline project implementation. And we do this through a data-driven approach through energy planning, implementing an enterprise-wide data management and modeling system, and we're doing it at scale, investing over $6 billion in Department of War projects across the entire department to improve efficiency, resiliency, mission capability, and capacity while reducing operating cost. We stand today at a critical juncture amid growing threats to our national security. And as I said at the beginning, continuing with status quo is no longer an option. We must strengthen our military installations and our communities and deliver our warfighters what they need. The challenges before us are significant. As we say in the building, all the easy problems have been solved. I only get the hard ones. But I would also say that I'm confident that by working together, we can overcome these challenges. I ask you to help us embrace the vision of the installation as the ultimate weapon system. Let's recognize the vital need to incorporate resilience into all that we do, and let's acknowledge the ways in which energy is the linchpin of our operations. We all know that Guam is pivotal in establishing deterrence, and we will match threats to capabilities. This requires a commitment from each one of us to help forge a stronger, more lethal fighting force. Let's embrace the change. Let's foster collaboration, and let's work together to build a more resilient, secure, and sustainable future for our nation. The time for action is now. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Zenon Bellinger. I'm with the University of Guam. I was outside for part of your presentation, so I'm going to ask a question on ocean thermal energy conversion.
Okay.
Has there been any discussions about doing directional drilling, because we're right next to the Marianas Trench, and if we go down about 3,000 feet from the land side, do directional drilling down, and then get the temperature differential, we can get two products. One is energy, and the other is we can desalinate the water and call it Marianas Pure.
That's great. So first, I only touched on a few of the diversity of the ways in which we're getting after the energy portfolio. My deputy assistant secretary who works on our energy portfolio, we have a pretty heady investment in research and engineering. And so we talk to a lot of folks. In fact, I will tell you that we're working with some overseas partners right now who are experts in geothermal and the way to get after some of those types of problems. So I'm not saying that I have a direct application today. What I am saying is we are incredibly open to the opportunities. That's why I know I touched on advanced nuclear, but I think people get me confused that that's the only thing I'm thinking about. It is a diversity of sources, and we're looking for the best possible opportunities to get that. So that is clearly in the portfolio and something that we want to focus on. So I appreciate that. But again, what I love about that, and by the way, this goes to all of our partners, those are the innovative ideas that we need to hear. At no time do I ever think that I'm the guy who has the answers. So I appreciate that input, and certainly we'll take that back with us.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Marks? Yes, sir, please.
Yeah. Hey, Mr. Marks. My name is Mike Cherney. I write for the Wall Street Journal. Just two quick questions for you. I mean, what do you think is the biggest obstacle the U.S. has in building out its footprint in Guam? Is it energy, housing, something else? And do you think the U.S. is possibly over-concentrating its forces a little bit too much on Guam, relying too much on Guam as opposed to dispersing elsewhere? Keen to get your thoughts on those two questions.
I appreciate that question. First, as we think about that, the answer to question number one is yes to all of the above. And you kind of knew that when you were going to ask me that, right? And I share that because, listen, it's all of those. It's been said so often. It's an integrated approach to the challenges. It's not just, this is why you hear me say words, the installation, our community is the weapon system. We have to approach it in an integrated systems engineering fashion that says, I'm going to look at all of those things, right? So I have to look at housing, and not have to, I'm doing that because that is mission readiness. One of the examples that I give is this: if I have an Air Force background, so if I had an aircraft maintainer who's worried about the quality of his or her home, and their child is getting sick or something's happening there, right? They are not into the mission. They're not ready to go forward. So when we talk about that, it's clean air, it's clean water, it's power, it's all the things that allow us collectively as a community to be prepared to defend the homeland, and that's really critically important. As we think about writ large, what I would say this has been, I would reinforce is Guam, as our secretary has said, is the tip of the spear and pivotal for all that we do here. And as Admiral Paparo said, we cannot imagine this without it. And so our investments here, I think, are appropriate to what we see the world doing today. But more importantly, this is, as Admiral Paparo said, this is our homeland. This is who we are. So this isn't a separate emphasis piece. This is what's critically important, and it's why we're here.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Yes. Bobby?
Thank you.
Please state your name again, please, for the record. Thank
Barbara Nicholas Beneventi.
Thank you.
I didn't come just for the lunch.
you.
I really do want to learn and understand better what I think is going on and what I hope would be the outcome for peace. But one of the things, as you speak about this partnership and equity with one Guam, safety for all, housing for all, and whatever the terms you use, because you really need to repeat all that so I can process it better in my brain. But what comes to mind when I think about defense and some of the things that we in the village are asked to pay attention to, they set off these drill sirens that's supposed to alert the villagers about, I guess, pending harm. But no one ever taught, so that happens like every month maybe? A siren would go off really loud, the villagers stop what they're doing and kind of listen. But nobody talks about, well, what happens if this is for real? Where do I go with my family to be safe? And if I'm homeless and I've lost my land to the military and never got it back, where can I call my home piece of land to bunker down with my immediate family and my extended family members? So there's a lot of things that you've said that has brought on some thoughts and questions, and I know I'm not framing it in an exact way that perhaps I could do it better, but how does all that you say help me to feel like you are going to protect my life and property and that of my family and my neighbors and the whole island community?
I appreciate that. If I may, I think I want to tell you, can I tell you a quick story? Just because I come at this a little bit differently, and that's not right or wrong, it's just different. So I just came from running a very large department installation in the Panhandle of Florida, in which I covered 3 counties, 11 municipalities, very, very large organization. And part of that background, the reason I share that is I was also someone who was ground zero for a Category 5 hurricane and watched my entire community get wiped out, to include the installation I was sitting on when it happened. Resilience, family, how we integrate, taking care of our families and where that means and how we communicate that is absolutely a personal issue. So I actually respect and thank you for the question. What I would say, and what the governor and I have spoken about, is the way that we do integrated planning and how we work this together. So there are great plans in place. We were sharing this just a little bit ago about how that integration needs to take place, that we have a responsibility, first and foremost, that we are defending our homeland here, and I think that that's critical to that. I bring that perspective here because I want you to understand that for me, that's how and that's why I'm here. At the same time, as you heard from the panel and from others, it's our working together to do that joint integrative planning to communicate. Can we communicate better? We can always communicate better. But I would say that what I would encourage, and we'll take back and discuss further, is ways of which we can ensure that integrated planning, the communication, and the places where to go and how that works. As you've heard already from examples, there are some challenges and opportunities, as I love to call them, where we can do a better job and look at how do we reach into that and how do we support the community. That's certainly something we can work together on further. But I would also encourage you, because of the leadership of the team here in Guam, that what I've walked away with, the way they've explained it to me, is they have a very, very good plan. And the joint integrated planning is very, very good. And so I appreciate the leadership. So I would encourage you to reach out and talk to the leadership here when I go back to DC, not because I'm trying to walk away from the problem, but I actually think it's better, and we just need to help folks understand. So I really appreciate that.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Would you like to take one more? Or?
Sure, I can take
Okay,
one more.
one last question.
I'll
Do we
take
have
it.
some-
I'll take it.
Where?
Since he was standing there, I wanted,
Okay.
Okay.
Appreciate that. Colonel Tim Puzan, retired Air Force and Guam Air National Guard. Thank you for your service, Secretary Marks. Appreciate you coming out. I guess my question and concern has to do with housing. And thank you for being the Chief Housing Officer. So now I got a direct line, and I appreciate that. So one of the, oh, there we go. That's the noise. Okay. One of the limit facts that we're looking at is the availability of housing for military buildup. There's another factor that we have to consider too, and that is the price of rental housing and how it's set. And so just explaining really quick, the overseas housing allowance that you're tracking that we military members will get is set at a certain amount based on their rank and if they have a family. So I'll pull a number out of the hat, $2,450. So I think a lot of people have heard this amount before. So with that amount available to a military member, they're going to look for housing for them and their family at $2,450. If they find somewhere that is $2,100, they're not as interested in that because they don't have no advantage as the military member to getting cheaper housing because they're not going to get $2,450, they're going to get $2,100. There is no interest on the landlord's part to lower the rents either because they're shooting for that $2,450 bingo. So that's kind of where we're at. So then there's a possibility here, and I think we're at the crux of being able to do something with that, and that is converting from the OHA paradigm to the BAH, Basic Allowance for Housing, or BH2, BA2. So that's where a member may get that same amount, $2,450, except they get to pocket whatever they don't pay in rent. So instead of looking for the $2,450 housing, they're looking for the $2,000 housing, $450 in their pocket. Now we have a supply and demand issue, but we also have the availability and landlords wanting to rent their place to a military member or anybody. That suddenly brings the price down on rental housing so that our kids, my kids, can actually start affording some housing downtown. And I'm looking for some sort of solution that we could maybe look at that side of the housing market as well. Not just supply and demand, but the cost that's set in many ways artificially by the military presence here. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So you're not the first one who's raised that, and we've had that conversation here. But let me address housing writ large, and then let me come down to the specifics of your question, okay? First and foremost, have a commitment with the governor on our ability to try and approach and answer the idea of affordable, attainable housing. That is, by the way, that is not just a Guam problem, that is a nationwide problem. I've been dealing with it in every community I go into. If I wasn't in Florida talking about housing, I was talking about childcare. And if I wasn't talking about childcare, I was talking about housing. So I understand it. We are rolling out here a pilot project we hope to release by the end of the month that's going to do we're going to pilot this one in Honolulu, but it is a new look at the housing market. What I came into the office, we looked at this and we said, we are not doing the best business case analysis in terms of how we get after housing. So we're going to pilot this one. My goal is that I would get that pilot back. It's different than the way we traditionally do things within housing analysis in the department. We are going to actually look at it as a business case, an economic case that addresses some of those things so we can get better data. Assuming that goes well, and I'm pretty confident that it will, we will then expand that as quickly as possible to key locations such as here. Okay, so that's step number one. We're going to use data-driven tools to get us to a place of better understanding of the market. So that's one. Two, I've already taken the notes, and I have a discussion when I get back into DC with Honorable Tata, who is the PNR. He actually controls what you're talking about. I don't. So weirdly, I get to control all the housing. I don't get to control what the BAH or the OHA is. So I have a great partnership there, so we're going to sit down and we're going to talk about that specific issue that you just raised, because I agree with you, that's there. Now, here's the challenge, right? The reason I started out with the study on the economics and the data-driven side is we also recognize that we can influence the market in ways that can be negative. And so we want to be very, very careful about how we proceed forward on this. I will also tell to all my government civilians, I have tilted at the windmill known as locality rate. It is not an easy thing to break in terms of cost of living, but I'm asking for very similar alignment, because what I do for my military brethren in uniform, which I appreciate greatly having been there, is we need to do similar to ensure that we incentivize our civilian workforce to have similar opportunities. So we're going to try to work on both of those things. I can't promise you I'm going to achieve that one, but I'm clearly going to raise that as an issue that we have to address, because here's the thing. If we're going to do that, we get down to ideas called workforce and workforce development, and the idea of the right people with the right skill sets that we need here to do the work. And when I say the work has been brought up, that's across the community. That's not just for us. I agree and appreciate that the partnerships that we're making, the governor and I talked about this again. You know, I told her yesterday, I said the people in Florida I was recruiting was 5th and 6th graders, because I'm trying to build a pipeline for success that comes out the other end that allows people to stay in their community where they're invested, where their family is, so that we do that, have the jobs available and pay them. You go, well, how did I get there from OHA? And the answer is that's all related. I can't just address the price of rental property. You have to address the entire ecosystem that drives us to understand what that looks like, so that we're actually adjusting the market. By the way, to all our developers and those folks who build us homes, thank you very much. I want you to be successful. Because when you're successful in our community, that means you're helping us do that. But collectively, the economic conversation has to be what is right for this community and what sustains that on all aspects of the economy, right? So the department, the DOW, is part of the solution, but so is our economic drivers, so is our industry drivers, so is manufacturing, so are all the other opportunities within the economic ecosphere that we call Guam. We need to make sure we address that correctly. It can't just be one piece of the puzzle, or I'm going to be the outsized influence on something that I don't necessarily want to be, if that makes sense. So I hear you loud and clear. I understand. I am taking that back. I'll have that meeting with Honorable Tata here very shortly, and then hopefully we'll start to get some traction on that issue altogether. But thank you for that question.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
really
Secretary.
important.